So, so yeah, before we get started, welcome to the Real Estate Industry Insights USC panel. My name is Lucas Damasco. I'm a sophomore at USC studying business administration and computer programming, and I'm an employer engagement student intern here at the USC Career Center. I'll be the moderator for today's panel, and we're also joined by a couple panelists from some premier firms in the real estate business. So with that, we'll get into introductions. Um, so I guess before introductions, just a quick agenda of what this panel entails. We'll be having some panelist introductions followed by moderated discussion by me. And then we'll open up the floor to all of you in attendance, as well as having some breakout rooms at the very end for you to individually talk to whatever representative from each firm that you're interested in talking with. So yeah, with that, we'll get started with the first introduction. So Savannah, if you wanted to get us started.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Savannah Ajar. I am a former Trojan, 2017. Fight on, everyone. And background on me. So currently I'm at CBRE as a senior associate, but not the most traditional jump into real estate, as some that studied in college jumped right in. I actually studied broadcast digital journalism at USC with a sports media emphasis. I worked at Fox Sports for just about 3 years and then made the jump over to CBRE and didn't always start in brokerage. I started supporting two senior brokers with marketing efforts and really all things touring as kind of a junior person, and worked my way up. I'm now a senior associate, full broker, and represent landlord and tenants in the South Bay. I'm out of the El Segundo office and outside of that as well.
Lovely, thank you. Michael.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Wyant. I just graduated this past May from the World Bachelor in Business program through Marshall. I'm relatively new in my career, but I did intern at a real estate shop called Lever Capital Partners, and I am currently an analyst on the real estate equity private markets team here at BlackRock in the Newport Beach office. I work mostly on the West Coast transactions team, evaluating new investment opportunities, as well as assisting with dispositions throughout the Western United States. I'm also an assistant portfolio manager for our BlackRock US Core Property Fund. I help run analytical support and help out with the operations of the fund. So excited to talk to everyone today.
Great, thank you. And Tim, you're up next.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Tim Sales. I'm Vice President of Forward Planning at RC Homes. I am a urban planner by training and a developer by vocation. I did go to crosstown rival UCLA, but don't hold that against me. And I'm really interested in talking to you guys tonight about sort of the various types of careers you can get into with your real estate training and education, including home building and real estate development. I work for a firm, RC Homes, and we're a moderate size home builder here in Los Angeles County. We build everywhere from Ventura to Inland Empire down to Orange County, mostly doing detached homes on grade 30 dwelling units to the acre and less. And really a lot of different components go into real estate development. And I want to just talk to you guys a little bit about those and see how they may align with your interests and values. So I look forward to talking with all of you.
Lovely, thank you. And then Stefan.
Hey everyone, my name is Stefan Trotchian. I graduated from SC, double majoring in business and real estate development in 2018. I also got my master's in urban planning from the Price School in 2021. Had a bit of a unique, I guess, career path. I started as a loan analyst at Marcus & Millichap's Encino office and kind of went from that into originating my own commercial loans for the last 5 or so years, primarily specializing, at least in terms of my larger deals, on ground up construction and permanent multifamily financing, although I also I've dabbled into single tenant, multi-tenant retail, office, owner user, and some other asset classes like industrial. I'm also a planning commissioner in the city of Glendale. I've been doing that for about 7 years. I have 1 year left on my term. And then in conjunction to that, I also help with equity placement and investor relations for my family business, which is a vertically integrated development, architecture, and construction shop based out of Pasadena. So basically love all things real estate, live and breathe real estate, and really looking forward to hearing from you guys and answering any questions I can.
Great, thank you so much. And then Ryan.
Hey, nice to meet everyone. My name is Ryan Deemer, and I'm associate at the Americas Investments team at Quadrille Property Group. Graduated out of University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada in 2018. Quadrille Property Group, we're the real estate arm of BCI, which is the public pension fund manager of British Columbia in Canada. Currently based out of Quadrille's Santa Monica office. My current role is to evaluate new opportunities, execute deal processes and manage our existing portfolio. Quadrille, we pretty much cover all sectors and markets. I'm personally focused on the US, and my two sectors of focus are really industrial and student housing.
Great. Thank you guys all so much for your introductions. And now we'll kind of get into the first portion of this panel, which is the moderated Q&A. So I'll start with the first question, and then we'll kind of go in the same order that you guys introduced yourselves in. So I guess starting with you, Savannah, what does your day-to-day look like in the office, and what exactly is your role at the firm in conjunction to all the other aspects of commercial real estate?
Yeah, so specifically at CBRE, I'm a office broker. So that really means what you think it is. It's me working with tenants to find their dream office, either relocating, downsizing, consolidating, expanding, whatever the client's needs is, or working on the agency side, which is working with ownership groups and landlords to lease, market, and or sell their building. So that's at a macro level. Day to day, the important things about what I do is you really need a pulse on the market. It's constantly changing. Your day to day will not look the same. Neither will really the state of the market. So as you can imagine, and what most people think when they think of office, they don't usually have a positive take on it. So post-COVID, I would say a lot of people think generally that office is struggling. My work specifically in El Segundo has a lot of defense-related uses. So there's a lot of office tenants and landlords that are really still thriving. Office is not dead, as people joke. But yeah, so taking into account trends, calling on brokers, calling on ownership, like making sure you're in the know at all times is really important. We're negotiating leases, negotiating LOIs for terms for specific buildings and spaces on the day-to-day, and also out of the office doing property tours, showing buildings for the landlord or tenant side as well.
Great, thank you so much. And then Michael.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I'm an analyst on the transactions team and as well as the portfolio management team. So in terms of the transactions team, that kind of consists of underwriting new deals across property types with a more specific focus on multifamily and industrial properties. For the portfolio team, I help out with analytical support for the fund, daily operations, fund level reporting. I guess to get more on a day-to-day basis, every single day is quite different. I know you guys probably hear that a lot, but it is true. It really depends which work streams I'm involved in that week. So on the transaction side, if I'm involved in a live deal or two, I'll be in Excel working on the model. I could be on the phone with my director discussing the model or reviewing comments. I could be talking to brokers such as Savannah on the phone about property specifics or market related questions. I could be making slides for the portfolio team. I could be out touring the asset. It really varies day to day. If I have a more portfolio management focused day, I'm working on a few different projects right now. One is a major project for the fund. It's like a very detailed Excel forecast model, which allows us to predict future returns, run various financing scenarios, acquisition and disposition scenarios, some other portfolio tasks I might be involved in, making slide decks for different investors or consultants who we interface with on their behalf, or doing fund level quarterly reporting. So in short, it's a lot of Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint, but I really am enjoying it so far.
Great, thank you so much. And then Tim, handing it off to you.
Wow, Michael, that was really great. I think one of the key things you said there is it depends on what the workflow is, what part of the life stage of a project you're in. And I think when I think about a question like this, you got to step back and realize that, we're a builder, developer, owner, operator. And so, real estate is an asset class that has a very long life, cycle. So my job is to be in forward planning, which means looking with our president at sort of deals that come in, do those make sense? Looking at the creative opportunity to plot certain kinds of product, design new product, looking at the strategic land use opportunities that may arise from different legislation, trying to basically make that project make sense so you can acquire that property and then process that through, assemble your team of consultants, manage them, get a good product, and then get the public sector to support that, and then hand it off to construction. So, maybe forward planning is not a term that folks have heard, but basically, that's the front end of the business on the business creation, idea creation, deal creation, and then getting those projects approved. So as you can imagine, that's a multi-year process. So depending on where I'm at, how many projects we have in the pipeline, I think as Michael says, it could be very, very granular stuff, like working with my team to make sure that applications are going into the city and absolutely positively every single thing we need to get in there is there. Some days it's, being more strategic and talking to, policy makers and local electeds to try to encourage them to, get behind a project that you have in the pipeline. Some days it could be, being creative with your design team to try to solve a problem or a challenge that comes up from the market research folks who say, hey, we need one more bedroom in these products. So it is definitely an iterative process, and it can go from sky's the limit down to making sure that everything is copied and right and submitted. So it's a really inspiring business, and one that also requires everyone to do pretty much everything that needs to be done and be thinking about the risks. So I think for people with an expansive point of view, an expansive mind, someone who loves to get into interesting ideas and really parse them out, it's a great career. And so hopefully that gives you a little sense of kind of the variety of things that I get into from day to day.
Great, thank you so much. And then Stefan.
Yeah, so I'm gonna echo some of what was already stated. So my days look pretty different. Every week is actually pretty different. So from the Marcus and Millichap side, I kind of run my own team, and I have a loan processor and like a part-time analyst. So it's really just a product of how many ongoing deals we have at that time and what those deals look like that dictate how a day goes. I mean, I would say generally speaking, earlier in the day or early morning, it's like planning, it's business prospecting and outlining what the rest of my day is going to look like. And then towards the end of the day, it's also new business prospecting and figuring out, how to market and attain new clients. In the middle of the day, in between, it's a mix of in-person meetings, phone calls, working on existing deals to make sure they're going through the pipeline correctly. And then spending a lot of time in Excel underwriting deals, and then also providing loan quotes to, listing brokers and agents we have in the office. 2 days a week when I'm working out of the family office in Pasadena, I'm doing a lot of reporting work, kind of working with our analysts and with our CFO and tidying up our packages to investors. And then often, once every 2 weeks, I have calls with investors. Often they're international investors in Japan. So it's like 5 or 6 p.m. calls once a week, reporting on, 2 or 3 of our assets to them. And then twice a month on Wednesdays, I have planning commission at 5 o'clock. So that's my weeks and days vary quite a bit, but that's kind of the general makeup.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And then finally, Ryan.
Yeah, definitely echo what everyone said. My days and weeks can be quite varied, especially if, I have a live deal going on or not, or, some kind of project that I'm working on. But I mean, one thing I can talk about is when I was an analyst, definitely the majority of my time was probably in PowerPoint and Excel. I'd say that, as I've kind of moved up to the associate level, some things that have changed are I'm spending a lot more time doing different things. Other than those 2 main points, I'd say that spending a lot more time, in the legal document space, working with our lawyers to negotiate transaction documents and partnership documents, working a lot more, managing the due diligence process. I travel quite a bit more. So every week's different, every day is different. I think that's why I really enjoy the investment space.
Great. Thank you all so much. And now moving to the second question. So kind of in the same order again, as people currently working in real estate, what changing industry trends have you noticed over the past few years? And do you have any recommendations for students to focus on during their studies in undergrad to make themselves more marketable to reflect these changes and hopefully place into one of these top firms? So starting with Savannah.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Lucas. Specifically in the office world, in my market, a lot of what the trends are saying is, hybrid work is a thing. They're thinking, they're really trying to right size and see if their footprint, I'm talking as far as the tenants go, they're really trying to, analyze their footprint, see if hybrid work works for them, see if combining and consolidating different offices is right for their business. There's been a lot of rethinking how much office people are taking. I would say that definitely is one. And unfortunately, downsizing has been a trend as far as office goes. But depending on the industry, I'd also say just technology has been a trend that's upticking. CBRE is investing in AI, a lot of different technology to make virtual floor plans, virtual touring, taking things in-house, and just real estate analytics tools. They're always kind of at the forefront of all that. And you're seeing that not only at CBRE, but they try to stay at the cutting edge with everyone else. So competitors as well. I'd also say, sustainability and ESG, like tenants, investors are all prioritizing green buildings, being wellness focused, workspaces being, WELL or LEED certified, which are all different standards of wellness for a building. And I think that is only going to get more clear as we kind of move on. I mean, you're seeing, buildings, office buildings all have EV chargers now, and you're just seeing that grow and grow. Another trend that I'm also seeing in the office market specifically is adaptive reuse. So some of these office buildings are a little bit less full, or some of these office investors are trying to rethink what office can be. So some of these office buildings are turning into mixed use. Some of them are changing to residential. Some are being sold and converted into medical buildings. So we're seeing some of that. And say another trend is just with interest rates fluctuating and, economic uncertainty that we've seen over the past couple of years, there's a lot of capital markets volatility. And it's, definitely, I'd say, making financial decisions a little bit more difficult, and people are a little bit more cautious. And the second part of your question was what students can do to position themselves well.
Yes.
To keep that. Yeah, I think kind of like Ryan was saying, financial analytics is huge. I mean, we have a lot of people that start at CBRE, start in research, and just knowing these tools, knowing, the AI, knowing how to use Excel or do like a cash flow analysis or underwrite deals, like that's all really important skills. And would be helpful across, not just in office, not just capital markets, but across kind of the whole board. I think in real estate and, other skills, I just think as much as you can do, cold calling, sales skills, anything like that, I think is helpful.
Amazing. Thank you for that well thought out answer, Savannah. And yeah, Michael, now you're next.
100%. I'm going to echo a lot of what Savannah just mentioned, especially about technology and ESG and the capital markets volatility. I think that's something I have observed quite a bit since joining. I can't say I've observed any changing industry trends, as I only started a couple months ago, but I'll touch on the technology trend, because one thing I have noticed being an emphasis here is an emphasis on data analytics and AI. So a course I would recommend to all the students here that I took at Marshall was a data analytics course. It has proven extremely helpful, especially doing portfolio level analytics for the fund that I help manage. Knowing how to make pivot tables, manipulate big data sets, and create dashboards can save a lot of time and can help create different portfolio level insights that might otherwise be lost. In terms of the capital markets volatility, that's I guess pivoting it towards an answer to the students, an area I think that's very important for students to be marketable is to be adaptable. Joining the real estate industry this year, it seems to be a very interesting time, a little bit of an inflection point. And I think a really key component of being successful these days is being adaptable to very volatile and ever-changing market conditions, and having a very strong grasp of what's going on in the economy, what's going on politically, and how that affects our assets and how that can affect our future acquisitions. So the 2 points I would say are data analytics and adaptability.
Great. Thank you so much. And then Tim?
Yeah, Michael, that was great. I definitely want to underscore adaptability. That's a good one just for life in general, because things are always changing. But I think, in where I'm at in more of a residential, it applies to commercial as well. Certainly in residential marketplaces, we all know there's a housing crisis. And I think that the legislation and state law and sort of policy making has started to try to address that to a certain extent. In the broader context, I think understanding the larger governmental universe we live in, the policy universe we live in, is super important and can lead to some creative and innovative solutions. So I think, thinking big and then applying those ideas to real estate products is something that is definitely worth some of your brain power to engage on. For example, our company's done a lot with, ADU law, where you can start to put, accessory dwelling units, 2 units on every lot. Some people are doing multiple units on a lot. I think intensifying and making real estate products which are more adaptable, as what Savannah said about kind of the office market is an important thing. So adaptability, creativity, kind of leveraging where the policy world is going is super important. Because, the old adage, it's hard to fight City Hall. So it's really important to kind of understand where policy is going. And then I think to make folks really marketable, I think really the soft skills are super important. Be able to communicate clearly, to be able to advocate in a strong way, but in a sort of a pleasant way. A lot of us, whether it's dealing with clients or whether it's dealing with policymakers or the general public, I mean, we have a lot of communication responsibility to influence folks to do certain things. And I think that's a very valuable skill. So that goes with, writing and being comfortable speaking in public. So I hope those ideas of being creative and adaptable in the policy environment and kind of being oriented to influence and having good people skills, social skills, I hope that helps to address the question that you raised there.
Great, thank you so much. And then Stefan?
Yeah, so this is a topic I guess I could go on and on about, but in first focusing on industry trends, I mean, a lot has changed since I entered the business in 2018. I'm going to focus on the lens of capital markets and then also development a little bit and kind of my 2 cents. I think basically from 2008 through 2018 or even through 2020, there you didn't really, as someone coming out of college, need to think much about the debt side of the equation in real estate because we were in a historically low interest rate environment. So whether deals were being made or not had less to do with kind of the rates at the time and what banks were willing to lend, as opposed to kind of different facets of the deal. I think that's changed substantially where we've seen huge fluctuations in the capital markets. So I think one thing that students can do to kind of separate themselves or have an advantage, especially if they're going into either development or the debt side, is to have a thorough knowledge of debt and how the banking sector works and how the different types of financing options are structured by developers, by private equity firms that just own real estate. I think that is a differentiating factor that's really important to learn, where a lot of students that come out of SC, they have your typical just great analytical skills and underwriting skills, but they may not have the exposure to debt. I don't know what the options are from an undergrad standpoint in terms of an exposure to debt, but I think if you have a chance to take a class that offers that, that's a skill set that's going to differentiate you and separate you from some of your peers. I think in the short term, what's most important career-wise in real estate, whether in your capital markets or if you're going into development, or if you have kind of an entrepreneurial mindset long term, in the short term, your technical skills are very important. So just being, your analysis, your ability to underwrite deals, be quick in Excel, and then your ability to communicate and present that information to your supervisors is going to be really important in the short term. And others touched on it with AI and business analytics. So those technical skills are going to lay the groundworks to kind of get you to where you want to go later in your career. I think later on, once you get through those preliminary years, it's more so about being a generalist and being knowledgeable and able to help on various facets of our business because there's so many overlapping factors in real estate. You have equity, you have debt, you have various types of financing. And one thing that I would really recommend is to take real estate law with Kevin Fields. I don't know if he's still teaching the course, but in our business, especially as you get into development, or if you're doing more complicated contract negotiations or loan contract negotiations, like in my world, having a legal knowledge, even if you don't have a law degree, I think is very important because most deals get done through legal negotiations later on in your career. So that's kind of always something to keep in the back of your mind. And I think Savannah touched on it earlier, but I can't stress enough the importance of sales and being able to pitch either yourself or a product in anything that you decide to do in life, whether that's brokerage, whether that's development. You're always going to have to either sell yourself or sell a product one way or another. So any way you can shore up or gain skills in sales, I think is very integral. So that's kind of what I would say.
Great, thank you so much. And then finally, we'll end off with Ryan.
Yeah, thanks. It's tough going last because everyone makes some pretty good points, but I'll really stress what other people have said in terms of just having a worldview that's wide. I think one thing when I'm always in interviews, I'm asking, how do you get your news? What kind of podcasts you're listening to? Where are you getting economic news? I think that ever since, especially post-COVID, the world macroeconomic factors, they're just moving very fast. And I think as an investor, it's super important to be able to absorb all the news that's happening, from political senses, companies, economic factors, and be able to very quickly interpret how that impacts both like your existing portfolio and new things that, new opportunities you might be looking at. I mean, everyone saw like DeepSync over the weekend, right? Obviously direct impact to stocks like Nvidia, but Quadrille, we have a big data center portfolio. That was the first thing that we got asked on Monday morning, right? So stuff like that, that's kind of an obvious one, but being able to kind of absorb everything that's happening in the world, especially because nowadays it seems that so many things are happening and it's happening all the time. You need to be able to take in that information and have a good ability to see what's out there and absorb all that information quickly.
Great, amazing. And then now we'll kind of come to our third and final question of the moderated Q&A. And then just a reminder for all the students out there, we'll be opening up the floor to whoever's interested in asking a panelist or all the panelists a question. Whoever has a camera on will get priority. We'll get to that shortly. So finally, for the last question, so this is kind of a twofold question, and obviously a lot of the students are on their mind with recruiting and internships, trying to place into these firms. So it's very pertinent to them. So what internships and extracurriculars did you participate in college that you think was most helpful towards your current career? And now that you're on the other side of it, on the business side, what qualities are you guys seeking in ideal interns when you're looking through thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of applications throughout every single year? So we'll start again with Savannah, and we'll go in the same order.
Yeah, I won't hit on too many because I know there's a lot of people that have to answer after me, but there's just a lot of helpful traits, I would say. So when I was an intern, I interned at Fox Sports. I entered at the Pac-12. I worked for Willow Bay, the Dean of Annenberg. I guess I also did some other jobs, but not really as, I would say, transferable. I'll go with those. They don't sound super transferable to CBRE off the bat, but I think one of the most important things for interns and people that I look at is communication. And if nothing else, working in production and working at all these other jobs in broadcast journalism helped me in my communication skills. And I think just, clear, professional, written, and verbal communication, like knowing how to leave a voicemail for someone, knowing how to write and structure an email, knowing how to, hold your own at a lease negotiation. All of these things are extremely important, and you'll learn as you go, but just not being shy, being curious. I think, being proactive in your work ethic and, showing initiative that you really want to learn is really important. And I think in the interns that I've had, the ones that succeed the most and the ones that do well, do all those things and have a lot of, I'd say the ones that are set apart are the ones that pay a lot of attention to detail, like the ones that, check their work and might take a second longer, but they've, double, triple checked and it, is client ready before getting stuff back to you always really helps.
Great, lovely. So Michael, you're next.
Yeah, to touch on a few of the things I was involved with during college, I mentioned earlier I interned at Lever Capital Partners, which is a capital markets brokerage. I actually got that internship through a USC connection. I'd be happy to connect anyone else with. So that was a really integral experience. Learned all the fundamental real estate terminologies. This was the summer after my sophomore year. I got to learn both about the debt and equity sides of the business, being at a capital markets brokerage. So that was a really cool starting point. I would say TREA and MREFA, both the real estate clubs at USC, were also very instrumental. There's a program through MREFA called the Mentors and Leaders Program, which does a really great job of teaching students the fundamentals of financial modeling, networking, and just generally about the commercial real estate industry. So I would highly recommend that program. I did a lot of case competitions in college, so that really helped with my communication skills and slide making skills. And last, I would say all the networking events that USC offers, take full advantage of those. I think that is something that's really distinguishes our school above others. Networking is a skill, you can get better at it. And if you just attend all the events that USC offers, that'll really give you a leg up. In terms of the qualities we look for in interns, I actually interned here last summer, so I can speak to what I think we're looking for. I can't say I'm in a hiring position, but I know that they're interested in students who have a demonstrated interest in real estate and experience working in real estate. Great communication skills, ability to work well on a team, strong in Excel, PowerPoint, Argus is also a plus. Steve Silk and Andrew Menard teach a really good Argus modeling class. It's called Real Estate Computer Modeling. I took that last spring, and that has proven very beneficial in my role. I guess to finish out, how to stand out among other applicants, I would really focus on having very succinct and clear answers about why you want to work in real estate, why you want to work for that specific company, and have backup for those answers. So think of your answers as your argument and your resume as your support for your argument. That's kind of how I would go about doing it.
Great, a lot of great tips. And then finally, we'll move on to Tim.
Yeah, Savannah and Michael, those are great suggestions. I'm approaching it from a sort of a real estate development point of view. And I think that when I was starting out in my career, just doing it, I think, you might be surprised sort of if you look around, you scan your environment, how much opportunity there is to roll up your sleeves and start trying to engage in real estate development. A little different than maybe if you're more transactionally oriented in the debt and equity financing world. But when I was in college, I'm doing my master's program. I worked on at the time I was very interested in historic preservation. We renovated a historic landmark. I think that, my intern experience was from a planning point of view, but I think the commonality of it is that I followed things I was passionate about. And I think that that's super important. I think that, the idea of like answering the question and really how you're going to answer that and why you want to be involved, that is so much easier when you're coming from a point of passion and having your values in aligned with what you believe in. So sometimes we get into degree programs, we think, well, that'll be a good job, a good career. But just take a step back and really think about what are the things in your life that are really values of yours, and focus your sort of entry into that professional world from that point of view. I think that you're always going to be interviewing with older folks who have more experience with life, and they kind of understand sort of how these things are typically framed up. And I think if you can bring a unique sort of perspective to it that's aligned with who you are as a person and what your values are and what your passion is very important. Now, saying that's part of it, right? I think you still need to have the technical skills, which I think it's always great to be very good at Excel. It's always great to be good at all of the Microsoft project suite. If you want to get in real estate and want to get your involved in development, learn how to do scheduling. Again, a different perspective maybe than some other folks on the panel, but those are important skills. And then I think also just want to really emphasize what Savannah said and other people on the panel. Be curious, be open-minded, but focus that curiosity into something that really drives you, because it's a tough industry. Real estate is a churn. It's tough, but it's very rewarding. And I think the best way to be rewarded is to have a focus on something that you're going to be enjoying and feeling like you're making a difference, as well as making a good living. Hope that helps a little bit.
Great, thank you so much. And Stefan?
I mean, everyone gave such detailed and great answers. It's hard to follow that up. So from my perspective, from the internship standpoint, I think don't be afraid to try 2 different types of jobs for your internships, because our industry, it's transferable from the standpoint of you can work for a developer, and then you can work for a debt fund, or you could work for a private equity shop that's, centered on a different asset class. I think, you may really dislike one category of real estate, but find a passion for another. So I think if you have the opportunity, your sophomore summer and then your junior summer to work 2 different internships, I think that's really important, because that should help kind of dictate mentally what you like or don't like, and also the size of company that you like or don't like. So those are all really important considerations. I mean, you could work at a place like QuadReal, where you have, it's a big company, but the team is small, or you can work for a place like Marcus & Millichap, where it's a big company, but there's so many employees in the company across the nation, like thousands of employees, and they're very different types of kind of work atmosphere. So I think just getting the exposure to different categories of our business and different workplace styles is important, because that's going to help dictate whether, you're happy in the environment that you ultimately end up in when you start working. A lot of the qualities for interns have been already stated, but I think genuinely I'm going to repeat it because I think it's so important. I'll just take a slightly different angle, but I do think the number one most important thing is curiosity. And it's not just in how Tim mentioned it per se. Like another thing I'll add to that is that it's also, I've had several interns in my career, and the ones that have been the most successful are those that are eager to learn, meaning you don't need to constantly go to them for work or to kind of give them tasks. They're always bugging you in terms of asking questions or asking for tasks, or just you can understand their passion for the industry they're in based on their attitude they take towards work and asking questions. So I think having the curiosity to learn and not being afraid to ask questions and just push for information is not only going to frame you in a great way to your employer, but it's also going to expedite your learning process, because there's only so much you can learn in school and in spreadsheets. You have to actually be kind of on the ground learning as you go. And the more questions you ask, the more you're willing to kind of listen in on calls from your supervisor, things like that. It's really going to expedite the learning curve for you. And then on top of that, just a general point of advice, I think, you know, if you're very even keel with a stable temperament, I think that goes a long way. Tim touched on it, but we can have a stressful business at times. I mean, certain days could be like putting out a fire. Certain days could feel like, you know, you worked on a deal for 5 months and the deal may die, or it may be close to dying, and it could feel like you kind of put in all this effort and you know, and for what? And so you have to be, you know, strong in that standpoint. You have to not get too high or too low, and you kind of have to stay the course. And I think if you can lay the groundwork for yourself mentally when you're young, then you'll carry that on to your career. I mean, you're going to have your days where you're down or you're up, but if you just keep in the back of your mind that this is kind of how our business goes, I think that's an important trait to carry with you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And then finally, we'll end off with Ryan.
Yeah. I hire and manage interns, so I'll kind of split the answer up into two. So in terms of what I think gets you in the door and what stands out on a resume to me, number one, people have kind of mentioned having those internships that are varied and kind of like, have that good experience that you can base your skill set off. But I just go further and say that, having that demonstrated interest in real estate is just so important in this industry. We're a niche industry, and having being clear that this is what you want to do is just very important on your resume. What really got me in the door in this industry was the Cornell International Case Competition. I think USC does that, so strongly recommend that or other case competitions. Having that sort of hands-on practical experience is super important. And yeah, just in general, having a varied background, your interest section, that's something that I always look at when I'm looking at a resume, like having actual interests that are interesting. Like, always ask about them, at least I do, in interviews. And like, if you say your interests are commercial real estate, I assume you don't actually have any interest, right? So like, say things that are actually interesting about you. And then in terms of like what I look for in terms of an intern, I think, people have mentioned technical skills, and that's important, but I'd say that's really more important on the analyst level. When I think about the best interns that I've had, people have mentioned these 2 points, but number one, it's definitely intellectual curiosity and proactivity. The person who is seeking out new tasks, new projects, new sectors they want to work on, and coming to me, coming to other analysts on the team, making clear what they want to do and demonstrating that they're interested in what they're doing is very important. I think it reflects in the work they produce. And then kind of on that, having ownership in your work and having high attention to detail, like mistakes are going to happen here and there in this job, but like making clear that you care about what you do, that's something that will follow you throughout your career. And I think it's like super important. It's definitely something that shows up from your first internship. So definitely focus on it.
Amazing. Thank you all then for these really well thought out, detailed answers. And now we'll be moving into the informal student Q&A portion of this panel. So with that, students, if you have a question, raise your virtual hand, and then I'll call on you, and then feel free to ask it to the floor, and then we'll keep going from there. Zane, if you want to go ahead and get started.
Hi everyone, I'm Zane. I don't know if there's a lot of us in this call, but I'm a senior. I'm going through the recruiting process right now, and uh, me and like a lot of the other people that I've been, talking to have hit a wall in their recruiting process. And so I was just wondering if you guys have any advice on extra steps to take or ways to kind of break through in terms of applications and stuff like that.
Amazing. Thank you for your question. So feel free, and if the panelists to step in, or we can go in order as well, but you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Ryan probably has the best answer to that, right?
I'll give it my best shot. So I mean, yeah, it's a tough period right now in the job market generally. I'd say that it's gotten better recently. I think when you're recruiting as a senior, even if you have internship experience or not, I think the best thing to do is to have targeted networking like all the time, right? Like, and when I say networking, it's not just cold messaging like every single person you'll come across on LinkedIn. It's like finding people who you really, met at, you went to the same alma mater, like, same club or fraternity or whatever, right? Like people who did the same internship as you a year before, now they're at a different job. Like, putting those feelers out, those connections is so important because I feel like that will absolutely like put your resume like onto that level where it's getting reviewed. And at that point, I think it's going through, you're actually like getting eyes on it, which I know is like super tough when you're applying for jobs that hundreds of people are viewing and like you have to get through the HR screen. It's tough, right? But I'd say like just in general, like I've noticed that recently the job market's picked up a little bit. So definitely don't get discouraged. Like it takes some time. Like I definitely went through that month post graduating where I didn't have a job. So it just takes that resilience and like outreach. And I think you'll get there.
Thank you.
Great. If no one else has an answer, we'll move on to Angelina.
I guess my question is, I'm currently working towards a master's in architecture, but I'm interested in real estate and the business of real estate. Where might I be able to apply myself, whether through like courses at USC or like internships, given my background in architecture?
Oh, well, I can jump in and try to answer that. I don't know about the classes at USC, but let me ask you, what are your interests in the development or real estate world? How do you see architecture and that overlapping? What do
Uh,
you envision?
I I have a connection to a land developer, and I was working with him on a hotel chain project that he was working
Mhm.
on. So I think that portion of like land developing I'm interested in. I feel like it has a lot of connection to at least what I'm studying in architecture. It's like creating space, finding value
Mm.
in space, and
Right.
selling space ultimately. And I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of like cool things associated with that and a lot of, I mean,
Yeah.
money also associated with it that is not really present in, unfortunately, my profession, but
Oh, that's okay.
I guess,
Well, I think
yeah.
thank you for kind of pushing that a little farther. I think,
Yeah.
you hit there. I would encourage an architect who's interested in real estate development to do sort of study, how does real estate get financed? How does a real estate project become feasible, right? You don't need to be someone who's doing the underwriting perhaps, but to understand the basics of real estate investment is useful because an architect has a huge input on, a huge influence on that, right? The other thing too, I think, is understanding, the other professions that go into making a project successful in an area that you are involved in physical development, civil engineering and public policy and those kinds of things. So rounding out a design related field of study with business and with engineering and public policy would be areas that would make you much more attractive, I think, to leverage your design skills into the development world.
Great. Thank you so much, Tim. Does anyone else want to hop in? If not, we can move on. Alrighty. So Tina, if you want to go ahead and ask your question, that'd be great.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed all of your conversations and presentations. Really learned a lot about the firms. So my question, it's kind of like a follow-up on Savannah's, like her mentioning about like the recent trends, but everyone could answer if they have like opinion. So my question is, Savannah mentioned that there's like a trend of like increasing use of hybrid spaces, but I was wondering, like, since like a lot of companies are pushing are mandating employees back to office, like for example, Trump is like letting all the federal employees to like return to office, or you just like quit. And also I think JP Morgan just asks all the employees to be in the office like 5 days per week. So I just wonder like whether there would be like a strategic adjustment here just to adapt to like the dynamics of like going back to office, or just like what are your perspective on that?
Yeah, Tina, I'll take this one, but you're asking the question that everyone's asking right now, what does the future of office look like? There's specific teams, even within CBRE, that specifically study what they call workplace, which is exactly this. So what is your work going to look like? So if you're a 5,000 square foot tenant or a 500,000 square foot tenant, how are you going to shift what your footprint looks like? How are you going to change that? And some use cases that you mentioned were like JP Morgan. They're in the El Segundo market and they're consolidating 8 of their offices. So what they're looking at is reducing in some of those specific, IT or certain forms or certain functions that do not need to be in office, and then others they are mandating them back in. So there are those like kind of hybrid work styles. AT&T is another deal, 130,000 square foot deal I did down the street, where they wanted 130,000 feet and they wanted to be in, mandating everyone 5 days a week starting September, or you look for another job. And so there's different office spaces, and I just say like high up companies that are treating it very differently. And there's no one size fits all for everyone. But we are seeing, and why I think it's important for me to stuck it out, where a lot of people, when industrial was hot, they switched to industrial. My perspective is that you can't really chase the wave. So I'm staying in office and hoping it recovers. But it's done well for me so far. And yeah, I think you and I both will be tracking the trends and see how it really develops. But there's definitely a trend upward for office from 2020 and COVID, where it was at its worst.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great. And then final question we'll have from Peter, and then we'll move into breakout rooms.
Awesome. Thank you all for taking the time. This is more of a question for Michael because he's like right out of college, but I guess anyone can answer. What is or what has been the biggest learning experience for you so far, or when you joined the job market?
That's a really great question, Peter. I would say the biggest learning curve for me, or something that people always told me about when I would start my job, is that it would take a while to get used to everything and to learn and to not rush it. And so after being here for 4 or 5 months, I've learned quite a lot, but I've also realized how much there still is to learn. I think a big part of that is not only just understanding the real estate market and how the deal cycle works, but also how, especially at a big firm where I'm at, how all the internal processes works and how all of our different technology works. It takes a while to just get a grasp on that. So not expecting to come in and being able to contribute a ton on day one is something that was tough for me to learn, but was definitely a big lesson I've taken away.
Thank you.
Great, and with that, we'll be opening up breakout rooms. I'll quickly share my screen to show you guys where each panelist will be going. And then yeah, we'll open up the breakout rooms momentarily. And yeah, so these are the breakout rooms. Alex, if you wouldn't mind quickly creating the rooms, and then panelists, if you want to each go to your respective room, that'd be great. And then in a couple minutes, students will be following up to talk to you guys. So yeah, feel free now to go into your breakout room. Ellie, Zane, do you guys have any questions? Or if not, you can go ahead and just join one of the breakout rooms.